This December, I wanted to try something new. Every episode this month will be somebody else interviewing me. I wanted to shout out and support fellow menopause podcasters, and if you enjoy these episodes, consider also following these women. Today, our special guest host is Tanja Shaw. Tanja is a functional nutritionist, kinesiologist, and high-performance coach. She combines diagnostic nutrition and brain science to help you stop emotionally eating, regain energy, and reach your healthy weight so you can live vibrantly. Now let's hear from Tanja.
Welcome back. Another awesome guest for you today. I'm excited to bring to you Jennifer, call her Jen Harrington. She is a naturopath and specializes in women transitioning to menopause. Now, if you have already gone through menopause, this episode is still for you. All the stuff still applies. Menopause is not just about your hormones. I know when we talk about menopause, we think about menopause, the first thing I get asked is, what about hormones? Because yes, hormones change during menopause. And while hormones might be the first thing you think about when you think about menopause, if you want to thrive and not just get through and be tired and all hot, flashy and up and down, but if you want to thrive through perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, there are so many other factors to consider other than your hormones. If you want to feel good at the stage of your life, you're going to love this interview with Jen Harrington. Now, we get a little bit sciencey, and I love the science side of things. But I also firmly believe that the more you understand why the habits are important, the actual impact these things have on your body, and sometimes actually what it does to you. And when we say things like slow down and chew your food, why it's actually important, I find when you have that why, you're just more inclined to do it because you really understand. It's not just this sort of lip service of like, yeah, I should chew my food, I should slow down, I should drink water, blah, blah, blah. I'll do that when you realize how important it is to our actual physical health and what it does. Like, I love the biochemistry, I love the physiology, I love learning all that. But I think it just creates that more desire, or gives you more desire to actually want to do it because now it's so much more important. It matters. I also think that the more you learn about your body and the more of an understanding you have of how your body works, I mean, your body is really, really cool and really incredible. And the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And I think I'll just be a lifelong learner about the human body because it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. But I think the more you know about your body, the better questions you're going to be able to ask. And on this journey with your health practitioner, with your doctor, you're going to be able to be a more proactive player. You're going to have to be able to be more proactive in the journey, which I think is a really good thing. So in our conversation, you're going to learn the other factors that you're going to want to consider and focus on in this stage of your life. Simple strategies to minimize hot flashes. I just put that in right there because I think that's a big complaint that a lot of women get. And strategies on how to get started preparing for menopause. I'm glad that you're here. Enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you on the other side.
Oh, Tanja, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
We are going to talk all things menopause and midlife changes. So it's going to be an exciting episode. I know my listeners are going to love it. Every time I do a podcast on more like the hormones and the health sciences, it's always so well received. So I'm really excited that we had time to have this conversation and to share more about this journey with others out there. So I'd love for you to start, as I do, introduce yourself, what got you to doing what you're doing now.
So I'm a naturopath, but I wasn't always a naturopath. I actually started my career off in television. Then I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I had a lot of pain with that. So I took myself off to a GP, got prescribed the oral contraceptive pill, and yes, it did regulate my cycle, reduce the pain, but it changed my personality and it changed my mood. So I went looking for another answer, and I found naturopathy, and I found that it also reduced my mood it also reduced my pain, but it didn't change my personality. If anything, I felt healthier and happier because I was healthier. So for me, it was enough of a change to rethink my whole career path, to go back, to retrain, to become a naturopath. And I initially started off working with women who also had reproductive conditions, and I was more in the fertility field for most of my career. And then I started getting night sweat and hello, perimenopause. And as my health shifted, I also found that my patients were also aging with me. So that just made it an easy transition to just go, okay, I'm going to hang up my fertility hat and I'm going to move more into perimenopause and menopause. And Menopause Natural Solutions has evolved into what I currently do, and that's been around since 2014. So it's not new, but I may be new just because I'm now talking to wonderful women like Tanja.
Awesome. That's quite the journey. Quite often we get into things because of our own personal stories and recognizing that there is a gap in other healthcare or whatever that needs to be found. And then you find it and you realize that more people need to have this. So I'm a big fan of setting intentions and really just having clarity on like what we want out of this. So as you come and you're speaking to the wonderful listeners of the Fit+Vibrant You podcast, what do you really want them to get out of this conversation?
If you have not gone through menopause yet, I would really, really like you to consider preparing for it. When I think about a woman's journey through her lifetime, there are different stages and phases that naturally occur. And pregnancy is one of them. And many women do preconception care. They look after their body. They get themselves into the best shape possible so that they have an easier transition into pregnancy. I would like women to consider also preparing for perimenopause to get themselves in the best shape possible so that they have an easier transition. Now, if you're listening and you go, well, too bad, I'm already past it, you can actually improve your health at any stage of the journey.
Yeah. And for a lot of women, they don't even recognize that they have these things that come up until they're going through perimenopause, menopause. And it's often the result of a lot of lifestyle choices that we make or not taking care of our health, whether it's chronic stress or whatever it is, that really it shows up when you're going through perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. So when you talk about preparing for menopause, what does that look like? What are the things that you would, in the ideal world, that everyone would do?
So if it's okay with you, I'm going to start with an analogy that might help explain the concept. So I see your body as a bucket. It carries you. And in that bucket, we've got water. And I see the water as being your health, your vitality, your life force. And we all come in different shapes and sizes, and buckets come in all different shapes and sizes. And as we go through life, different things dink our bucket, different things punch holes in our bucket. So the more holes we get in our bucket, the more water leaks out, or the more life force leaks out of our bucket. And different things that can puncture your bucket. We can look at things like the role of diet. Are you dehydrated? Are you missing macronutrients? Do you have any nutritional deficiencies? Because these certainly will puncture holes in your bucket and make you lose water. I also look at the role of the environment. Have you been exposed with a lot of xenoestrogens? So I should say what xenoestrogens are. These are environmental chemicals that have an estrogen-like effect in the body. So the more of these we have in our body, the more of these log on to our receptors so that estrogen doesn't have an opportunity. Our natural estrogen doesn't have the opportunity to exert the effect that we would like it to have. So we get what we call dirty receptors. We also need to look at mold. Whether you're living in a mold-filled house, there is a particular strain of mold, which I will call Zea for short because its long name is very, very hard to pronounce. And that also has an estrogen-like effect, but a detrimental estrogen-like effect in the body. Then we can look at metals. So we are part of the lead generation. Growing up, we had lead in our petrol. We had lead in our paints. We were surrounded by lead, and some women were able to excrete that lead over time. Other women have stored lead, and lead likes to be stored in the bones. So as we get to this stage of life, we know that our bones start to reduce. And as the bones are constantly breaking down and rebuilding. But unfortunately, as we get older, the breaking down is faster than the building up. So we start to see bone loss. And we can start to see lead being re-released into the body that was stored in the bones. So environmental toxicity can certainly hinder your health or punch holes in your bucket and make you lose some of your vitality. We also need to look at lifestyle. Are you exercising? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you have any mindfulness techniques that you're using? And this links in also to your adrenal health.
Mm-hmm.
Adrenal health is massive. If you have lived a stressful life, and hello, I have. I don't know anyone who hasn't. This is all playing a role in how our adrenals function. Because as we go through the menopausal transition, our main form of estrogen stops from being ovarian-produced estrogen to being adrenal-based estrogen. And your adrenal glands already have a full workload. They're already producing all of your stress hormones. And could it actually take on another job by producing more of your adrenal-based estrogens for later on in life? So I do really believe in lifestyle medicine. I'm a big fan of meditation, of dancing, of music, of singing, of all your vagal nerve exercises. So that plays a key role for me. And we also, there's so many other factors, but I really want to make sure we talk about digestion. Because our microbiome, within our microbiome, we have a subsection called the estrobolome. And the estrobolome helps us to excrete used hormones, particularly estrogen and testosterone tends to go down that pathway. And if we don't have a healthy estrobolome, we do get recycling, and it tends to be a bigger issue in perimenopause when we have higher amounts of estrogen, and we can have issues with heavy bleed, with reproductive growths like fibroids, like endometrial hyperplasia, like cysts and polyps. But also your digestive health is where we produce our serotonin. And a lot of women might know serotonin as being the happy hormone. And certainly we do see that there's a drop in moods during this time. I think they say 47 is your peak unhappiness, which it doesn't have to be. I'm not putting it out there. But
awesome.
There's things we can do to prevent that. And serotonin, roughly 70 to 90% of your serotonin is produced in your digestive system. It is a neurotransmitter, but there's that whole big gut-brain axis where it's the gut producing your serotonin. Serotonin, as well as being the happy hormone, is also involved in temperature regulation. There's a thing called the thermoneutral zone, and this is your range of temperatures in which you feel comfortable. If you're above this, you feel hot. If you're below this, you feel cold. And there's certain things that rather narrow your thermoneutral zone or to expand your thermoneutral zone. And when we're talking about narrowing it, stress is one of the key factors in reducing your thermoneutral zone. But one of the key, yes, estrogen is one of the things that can expand your thermoneutral zone, but so is serotonin. So it's important for temperature regulation that your body can produce a good amount of serotonin. And this comes back to your gut health. Mm-hmm. So, and then we look at your things like your general health. Have you got any undiagnosed or poorly managed conditions going on? Because these will also play a role. The big ones I see is issues with blood sugar regulation, issues with thyroid health, and issues with liver health, especially things like fatty liver. And what I see is as we're going through the menopausal transition, all these different factors have punched holes in our bucket. And then we get hormonal change, which punches another hole in your bucket. And for me, many women come and they just address the hormonal factor. They just put one patch over one hole in their bucket. And yes, they may have less water leaking out, but they're still losing water over time. And I think you've got options. You can start. And in women who have had a premature menopause or have had a medical menopause, definitely patch that hormonal hole and then start working on all the other holes. But for other women, and when we're looking at preparing for the menopausal transition, I start with the other holes. Because when you've got a robust, sturdy bucket with no holes in it, hormonal change can come and it won't create the same havoc that a holy bucket will. And when we know that basically 10% of women will go through the menopausal transition with no signs and symptoms. Their periods will just stop. But for 10% of us, it'll be extreme, the absolute far extreme worst case scenario you can ever imagine. And the rest of us are in the middle somewhere. So I do believe that there's something that most of us can do. Simple lifestyle, simple dietary, nutritional factors to make sure that we are as healthy and as robust in our health as absolutely possible leading into the transition. But as I mentioned at the beginning, it's never too late to start. So if you're postmenopausal, please also address all the factors that we just discussed.
You know, what I'm thinking about here too is like we see the symptoms through menopause or perimenopause, but the symptoms are not just because of hormonal health. It's because of all of these other things. And I guess, I mean, and not just sex hormones, other hormones too. It's cortisol, it's blood sugar regulation, it's your thyroid, it's serotonin, all of these things. So what we tend to do we do like a lot of relief care where we just want to get rid of the symptoms. And that's often like, you know, putting a little patch on something or but not actually fixing what's actually going on with the body and looking at from a more holistic perspective of wellness. And then therefore those other symptoms are not quite as, they either don't exist or they're not quite as big anymore. So this is a really big picture overview. I mean, you talked about digestion, you talked about, blood sugar regulation. We talked about, liver function, liver detoxification, gut health, and the sex hormones. So it seems kind of overwhelming. Like there's so much. So where does one start? And how do you know like that you're doing some of the right things or you need to change things? Like it feels like if you're listening to the podcast, you're like, hey, yes, I'm struggling, but now what do I do? So where would you start with someone? Where do you recommend others would start?
I think you can start anywhere. Like you said, there are lots of things, and overwhelm is when you try to do too much at once. Even if you take one thing away, you might say, okay, I've had digestive issues my entire life. I'm going to start there. That would be a great place to start. Or it might be, okay, I know I've seen my doctor recently. I know we've identified some nutritional deficiencies. You know, that could be a good place to start. There is no perfect place for everybody to start. I think if you have a want, a desire to start, then things will show up. And it could even be that you start with lifestyle, that, okay, I'm going to self-care, look after myself. I'm going to start walking. Ultimately, it is a lot. I acknowledge that, which is why it's really helpful to have a team approach to your healthcare. And I'm just one naturopath. There's many naturopaths out there that are focusing on the menopausal transition. It might be that you want to see a naturopath or a nutritionist or a herbalist or some sort of allied health. But I even recommend you look outside of that and maybe looking at manual care. Maybe you also need a chiropractor or an osteopath or an acupuncturist or someone else, because there's no one practitioner that can do absolutely everything for you. And I do find that the team approach really well. And, your first starting point might be your local doctor or your family doctor to just get some simple blood testing done to see if you can identify where a good place for you to start is. Because one of the key factors that I look at is undiagnosed or poorly managed condition. So that could be a way to identify, oh, hold on, I found an issue with my thyroid that I wasn't aware I had. Or maybe I've discovered that I do have fatty liver or I'm pre-diabetic. That can help, I guess, find you that starting point. And know that health is ever evolving. I don't think there's not a destination. Like you don't get there and go, woohoo, I've made it. I've conquered health. It's not. It's an ongoing journey. And it's just taking that first step, knowing that it is a lifetime journey.
So let's say then you have someone who comes into your office and says like, hey, I'm dealing with like hot flashes and this is going on. And like I'm constipated or whatever's going on. Like, cause there's lots of like, usually it's not just one thing, right? Where do you start?
So I get them to fill out a very detailed questionnaire before we have the first consultation, because then I can look through there and I can start writing down some of my red flags. And then I can go back to those red flags and say, what will give me the most bang for my buck? And generally as a naturopath, as a general rule, we start inside out and head to toe. So if the symptoms are like a skin symptom, then that wouldn't be the first place I would start. Although a lot of women do come to see me for hormonal acne or rosacea, you still start inside. You start with the gut because that quite often clears up what's going on with the skin. But if it doesn't, you'll work your way out to the skin. And from the head down, like if they're coming in with migraines, sinus congestion, things like that, I will prioritize head symptoms over, say, a sore ankle.
Gotcha. So you do like a questionnaire, an interview, and then do you do testing? Like yeah. And is it usually, do you do blood testing? Do you do saliva? Do you do like I guess it depends probably on what you're looking for.
I guess it's safe to say that everybody will do some form of blood testing. And it can be that they've already done some blood testing that we can have a look at. But generally, I want blood testing that's done within the last 12 months. So most women have that, but if you don't, it's a good chance to go back. And I'm happy for you to use your family doctor. I'm happy for you to put it on your insurance. But then I would look at, is there any functional testing that is relevant? And that could be hair, could be saliva, could be stool, could be urine, could be blood. It just depends on.
Of course, it depends on the person. So let's talk more about, you mentioned lots of different kind of areas, and it's a very, I guess, a very general, and it's also very individual because one person might be rocking the digestion, but not so good at the exercise, or, there's different things, or maybe has some issues with the liver. Let's talk. I actually would love to talk a bit more about digestion, because I think that's one of those things that we don't talk about a lot, but it's so important. And when you think about, producing hormones and producing neurotransmitters and enzymes, I mean, it comes from the food that we're eating. And if you're not digesting food properly, it's kind of hard to get everything that you want. It's amazing too, how many people have digestive issues. So when you are looking at specifically at digestion, then you mentioned the serotonin as well, what are some things that what women can do to improve their digestion? And I get that you can't just say one thing and you're a naturopath, but you're not their naturopath. So it's kind of hard to
Yes.
What are some of the general principles that one might take and apply, or questions that they can ask to help guide them to better digestion?
Yes. Well, I guess it all starts in the mouth. So are you somebody that engulfs food as you're running around, stressed out, or do you actually take the time to sit and enjoy your food? Because for me, it's not just about what you eat or when you eat, it's also how you eat.
I was so hoping you'd say that, because that's so important. And it's one of those things that we talk about mindful eating till we're blue in the face. And until you realize how important it is to sit down and chew your food. So I love it. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. But also, what's going on while you're eating? Are you sitting there watching the news, which is telling you about all the doom and gloom and bad things going on in the world? Or are you maybe sitting down and enjoying some company, having a meaningful conversation? Or do you have maybe some beautiful music on in the background that you enjoy? Is it a beautiful candlelit dinner? Like, I don't think you should save your special. I think about my grandmother, and she had her special plates for special occasions that were put away. It's like, no, every day is a special day. I celebrate every day because I'm here today. I'm healthy today. I'm going to enjoy it. So I think get your good cutlery out, get your good plates out. Why not celebrate every day? But after that, so when you're chewing, you want to chew, and swallow. Next thing it comes down to our stomach, where we need to have a good amount of acids and enzymes. Unfortunately, as we age, our production of acids and enzymes reduces. So there's certain things we can do, certain things most people can do. So keep in mind, I'm not taking into consideration likes, dislikes, allergies, intolerances, anything like that. And if you fall into those categories, don't do anything I'm going to suggest. But if you can tolerate it, so things like having some freshly squeezed lemon in water, or even putting freshly squeezed lemon over meat. So if you're doing over fish or over chicken, it could just help with that digestive process. Some people have Swedish bitters or apple cider vinegar in water before meals just to help stimulate anything that tastes bitter. So it could be a dark green leafy salad with maybe some rocket or dandelion or any of your really bitter green herbs prior to a heavier meal can just help with that acid and enzyme production. A lot of women, though, might need supplementing. They might need some sort of digestive enzyme, potentially with or without a digestive acid. And the amount of women out there who are on antacid medications, my concern with that, and obviously speak to your healthcare provider about it, don't stop it, go and chat to them, is that we need the acid to break down our food to extract our nutrients. And there was a book, The Mineral Fix by Dr. James, and he states that 1 in 3 Americans have at least 10 mineral deficiencies. So it's not single deficiencies in isolation, it is across the board nutritional deficiencies. And when we look at that, it's not that they're not eating one particular food. It's not like one food is going to solve all of their problems. We need to look at the health of the digestive system. And if you don't have enough acids, if you've been on an antacid for a long time, certainly don't stop it. You will get a rebound acid effect, and it's not going to be pleasant. But that could be somebody that I would really consider putting on a multi-mineral or a multivitamin to help them, knowing that they're not going to be extracting the same amount of nutrients from their food as someone who's not on that medication. And then as we go further down, I look more at the microbiome, and that's when I might do a stool test to send off so we can have a look. Do they have the good guys, the bad guys, the ugly, worms, parasites, what's going on in there, so that we can do different things to optimize the good guys and take out the bad guys. And then like you're also looking at what sort of issues is that woman having? Is she bloated? Does she have diarrhea? Does she have constipation? Is there pain and discomfort? Because that can also help to identify like constipation. It could just be as simple as dehydration. Is she drinking enough water?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just, I like we were just talking about this, David, and start that conversation, because we often just go around thinking that these things are normal. And when they're not, like they're not, you're supposed to have poop at least once a day, and it's supposed to go out and like bloating and yet how simple some things are that you can do to help improve digestion. And I think that the more education we have as to why it's also so important, the more we're going to prioritize it, because I know like we just don't really talk about it so much. I mean, now gut health is starting to become more prevalent, and we do learn more about it, and it's more mainstream, I'd say. But we still kind of think like, oh, digestion, like it's not that, but it's so important. It's so important. It's massively, it's like the root of like, you can't produce the things you need to produce and the vitamins and minerals that you need to thrive and to manifest and to produce hormones if you are not digesting your food properly. So I love that you shared a couple things there to help that really simple, like that, again, that slowing down and just chewing your food. How many people I've worked with who, when they adopt that habit, one, they realize some of the food that they were eating they didn't like anyway, but how much their digestion improves. And it's just mind-boggling. Now, you mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast about estrogen and how we need to eliminate estrogen. And if we don't do it properly, it can be recycled into the body.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the word that you used to describe that pathway. Is that part of the liver?
So glucodoneration.
Okay, that's what you said. Got it.
Yeah. So I didn't say glucodoneration. I said the estrobolome.
Okay.
So the
estrobolome
is the subset, but the glucodoneration is the pathway. So think about we've used our estrogen. It's come through the liver, and the liver goes, okay, we're going to tag you for excretion, and it tags it by putting a sugar molecule on the top. But as it comes through the digestive system, if you've got dysbiosis, so if you've got too many of the bad guys' favorite food is sugar. So they see the sugar tag on the top and they go, yum, we're going to produce beta-glucodonerase, which is an enzyme, which is a scissor, which chops the sugar molecule off the top. So it can eat the sugar, and the estrogen survives exile and gets to live another day and circulate through the system again.
Oh, and so that is sometimes why women have estrogen dominance then, and will have or the estrogen progesterone ratio be off.
Yeah.
Got it.
But it's also, if you've ever done any saliva testing and you've had a look at, so it wasn't saliva testing, it's in the stool testing. Quite a lot of the stool tests will look at how much beta-glucodonerase you have in the system, and that is how much of that enzyme has been produced that snips off the sugar. But it's not just estrogen that can be glucodonerazed. It's testosterone. It might even be some of your stress hormones. There's other hormones that use that system so that you can get recirculation, and there's also drugs that go down that pathway and get recirculated as well. So it's always good to see, and it's in a stool test, what your beta-glucodonerase level is so that you can do things. And it's generally by working on, it depends on what's going on with your microbiome, but
sure.
It can be putting in prebiotics, and prebiotics are food source for your probiotics. So you grow more of the good guys to help balance out the bad guys, because the problems start with dysbiosis when you've got too many bad guys crowding out the good guys. So I'm trying to keep it simple, but
no, I actually really appreciate it because I'm actually learning this right now. And I have I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I'm going through some education because I love science and I love the human body and how the human body works. So the way you described it there, I'm like, that's it. Now I get it. So thank you. That was probably more for me than anyone else. But I honestly think that, some of my podcasts are pretty mindset based and very, which is important too. But I find it so fascinating to really understand, and even if you don't know all the nitty gritty details of the body, but understand how complicated the body is and how important it is that when we say things like, hey, take a probiotic or eat more prebiotic foods, if the probiotic is the right thing for you, or slow down to your food, or exercise, or do things that's going to promote detoxification, sweating, that sort of thing, or dry brushing, or often we think detoxes is I'm just going to go on the juice cleanse, but there's other ways to do it. When you start to really understand, I think, what actually happens in the body, it just really reinforces the fact that when you say things like that, it's not just because you want to give someone something to do for fun. There's a purpose behind it. And for me personally, I find it so helpful to connect what I'm doing to why it's important, even if you don't understand the whole side. So I actually really appreciate you explaining that sort of thing, because I think it's really, really valuable. So when you do give the advice to digest your food or to it makes sense. It's not just because I know, it's just a trendy thing to do. It actually makes sense. You know what I mean? Like it's good.
Thank you. Something just popped into my mind, and that is something simple that most women can do is increase their fiber, because that is something else that I know most women don't have enough of at any stage of life, but especially at this stage of life. And fiber, depending on the form of fiber you've got, most fibers have some prebiotic benefit. It means we're taking the fiber for bugs in our gut and not for us. We don't extract any nutrients from it. It can help to make a bigger stool, make it easier to have regularity of bowel movements, but you're actually feeding the good guys along the way. So it can be that you're taking a fiber supplement. It can be that you're having more fruits and vegetables with added fiber in there. But yeah, that's an easy tip that I think most people across the board can take away, because even if you have food intolerances or allergies, you just avoid those forms of fiber and go for different forms of fiber.
Sure. Now, actually, talking about fiber, I've heard in the past that there are different kinds of fiber, and often we have like inulin and chicory root that haven't been. Now, this might be outdated science, that have not been shown to be as beneficial as the fiber that you get from like bran or your fruits and vegetables. Does it matter what kind of fiber? Because there's lots of products that just add fiber to it versus the actual like. And maybe you can speak to that, because this is like probably outdated now from when I learned this, but I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
It's hard to give you a exact answer without looking at a stool test.
Gotcha.
Because when we look at the stool tests, we could say, okay, you need more of these bugs. And what food do these guys like to eat? Okay, we'll give you this one. So I guess something that might work across the board is that you have a broad spectrum, like a fiber supplement that has multiple different forms of fiber in it. It's not just all one type. Would potentially be a good suggestion. And the other thing is to start low and slow, because if you've not had fiber for a long time, or if you've been deficient for a long time and you have a large amount of fiber, your body can react because it's too new and it's too sudden. So you want to start with potentially even a quarter of the dose of whatever you're taking, and then just sit on that dose for a week and just check, do I feel bloated? Do I feel constipated? Has anything changed? Anything altered? And then maybe if there's no negative side effects, then go up to the half dose. Sit on that for a while, see how you feel, and slowly work your way up. So with fiber, low and slow, but also make sure you're adding adequate water in. Because if you just take fiber without water, I can guarantee you're going to plug up the hole.
It's not going to feel good.
Open it up, and to have a bigger, bulky bowel movement. So you need to have not an abundance, but adequate water.
Water. Yeah. Yeah. No, water is again, one of those things like we talk about all the time. Like, it's important to drink water. It's good to stay hydrated. And when you realize how important water is in our body's function, it's like, that's why Jen said I should drink my water. That's why Tanya says to drink my water. It's because it's actually really important for us. No, I like it and you will notice, you're absolutely right. If you have the fiber with water, but it's not going to feel very good. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Awesome. Yeah.
While we're talking about water, something that a lot of women get benefit from, and especially if you're having heat, any of the heat symptoms, hot flushes, night sweats, just sweating in general, is to pop in a dose of electrolytes in with your water. Now, if you've been told to be on a potassium-restricted diet or a sodium-restricted diet, maybe chat to your individual healthcare provider before doing this. But if you haven't been told that, for most women, it can really help. And it's just what I'm looking for is a clean product. I don't want colors, flavors, sugars, preservatives, anything like that. I just want a pure concentrated electrolyte. And again, with this, you probably start on the half dose and just put a cap or a teaspoon, depending on if it's a liquid or a powder, in with the water, because not only are we low in water, we're also low in our electrolytes. And if you're sweating your electrolytes, you're creating a bigger issue with deficiency that for some women, if they're having lots of episodes of sweats, then I would get them to do this half dose every time they have a sweat just to replace what they've lost. I call it my 7-day electrolyte challenge, where you take a dose of electrolyte every day for 7 days, and you see how you felt at the beginning and you see how you feel at the end. I haven't met anyone yet who's made it to the end who hasn't noticed something. And it could just be, you know what? I think I have a little bit more energy, or I think I can think clearer, or my muscles, I'm not getting those deep cramps, those painful, achy cramps anymore. And it might be that you have less night sweats or hot flushes, or that they're less intense or they're less frequent. That's a simple, easy tip that I hope you try if you're struggling out there.
Awesome. Such simple things. And I think a lot of what you're sharing is pretty simple. And sometimes we want to jump ahead and we want to get all the testing done, or we want to just, or go right to supplementation or whatever. But working on just these basic lifestyle habits, how important they are. And if you do supplementation, then there's definitely a really important role for that. It's still important that you do everything else to support the body. So
that's what they call supplements. They add to. You have to get the basics, the foundations right to get the most benefit from supplementing. Yeah. That supplements on their own won't cover everything. It's just something I wanted to add.
No, absolutely. All right. I have a couple questions to kind of wrap things up. What's one book that you have recommended more than any other book?
Oh, I recommend so many books.
You can have a couple then. You can give us a couple. Go for it.
Well, we were just talking about electrolytes, and I think sodium has been unfairly criticized, that we realized in the past that we were all on low-fat diets, and we realized actually low-fat diets aren't a good thing, that there's good fats and there's bad fats. And it's the same thing with salt. Low-salt diet, it's not right for everybody, and there is actually good salts and bad salts. So The Salt Fix is the name of a book by Dr. James, and that I think is an awesome conversation starter with your GP if you have been recommended to be in a low-salt diet. So I don't know your story. I don't know if you have or haven't been recommended, but read the book. It was written by a cardiovascular researcher, just saying, well, why have we been told to be in a low-salt diet? And the research doesn't actually add up. So it's a good one for you to read, to then go and have a conversation with your doctor if you've been told to be in a low-salt diet. And yes, there are good salts and bad salts. So please don't go out there and say, Jensen, I can have salt. I'm having this processed food and that processed food. And no, I'm not. The other one, it's probably The Slow Moon Climbs. And it's a book looking at the history of menopause. And I found it fascinating, but I will warn you, the first 1 or 2 sections is really science heavy. If you don't like that kind of read, maybe don't get the book, or maybe read the last bit first. The last section is more about modern menopause and how we even developed hormone replacement therapy, and how hormone replacement therapy was originally designed and marketed to the husbands to keep their women controlled. But that's another. I don't know. We could go down that path today.
That's another podcast episode.
But it's I like reading science. You said that you love science and you love studying. I think it's a book that you might enjoy, just looking at the history and what used to happen in Indigenous tribes, because menopause is not new. It's not a hormone deficiency. It is a normal, natural part of life. And we have, as long as humans have been around, we've gone through menopause. And it's just interesting to see what Indigenous tribes did and what's happened in the past.
Well, I'm reading a book right now that I don't love, so maybe I'll get that one instead.
It's tough going at the beginning. So if you're struggling, just jump to the end.
Jump it and then go back. No, we'll see. Sometimes I really can jam out on the science side of things, as long as I don't get completely lost, because sometimes it keeps going. And I didn't understand the first part. So I'll slow down.
You can
go down with it too. What's one of your go-to meals lately? What's on your rotation this fall?
Oh, we have, so in my house, it's just myself and my teenage daughter. No, it's spring. We have recently started making we love Asian food. So it's just like a teriyaki chicken that we have changed to have a lot more ginger and a lot more garlic. I really like using spices. So I can tolerate chili. I'm aware that a lot of women going through the transition, it's a trigger for them. But I just like adding where I can garlic, ginger, onion, any sort of spices like that, just to, because you also get medicinal benefit from them. But I don't think about that. I think about the taste. I think it tastes nice. I enjoy it. I love it. So yeah, it's a teriyaki chicken and a vegetable stir fry that has been the newest thing that we've sort of gone, we've tweaked it. We've got it. That's how we like it. And we put a lot of sesame seeds over the top because sesame seeds are my favorite calcium source.
Love it. Well, it's so good when you have these recipes that you get, then they just become, you always have the ingredients on hand and they're always ready to go and you can just whip it up and you kind of know what you're doing.
We've been working on it for a while. Adding a bit more this, a bit more that. And it's like, we nailed it.
Awesome. Awesome. And what's one self-practice or routine that has been a really like a big game changer in your life?
I would say paced respiration. And there are so many different breathing techniques out there. But paced respiration, maybe even a decade ago, I started seeing in the research. So looking at research for menopause and paced respiration, if you do 15 minutes twice a day in a particular clinical trial, they found a 52% reduction in menopausal symptoms like hot flushes and night sweats. And I'm like, breathing, changing how I experience heat. I like that idea. I'm going to try it. And it's very, very simple technique. It is just what we're aiming to do is 6 breaths in a minute. So breathing in to the count of 5, breathing out to the count of 5. And I have a monkey mind. So I get my phone out and I put the timer on so I can see that's 5 seconds, that's 5 seconds. And I find by having something to look, I'm focusing on the numbers. I'm not focusing on, have I done the shopping? What's for dinner? Is that load of washing in the machine finished? I'm looking at the numbers. And I find for me, it's worked because I've got something to focus on and it's slowing down my breath. That the 15-minute goes and I'm like, we're done already. So
you do it for 15 minutes.
I do it for 15 minutes. The research was twice daily. Full disclosure, I don't get the second one in, but I recommend you attempt to get the second one in, but it just, in reality, doesn't happen for me.
I can imagine, even if you did it for like a minute, like how, like that's taking all of your sort of senses like in your brain, like so it goes here and there and everywhere. And just to focus that, like what a great tool to have, or 2 minutes or whatever, but just to really like get present and like get into your body for a moment, that would be really, I'm going to try it. Thank you.
And I really think if you're having a bad day, just to find a toilet, public toilet, whatever, lock yourself in and even just take 3 long, slow, deep breaths.
Yeah.
Can change your outlook. So if you have a bad day, do that. But if you've got time, and it's, the timer thing, I don't know where I got that from. I think I was trying to perfect to make sure I was doing 6 breaths a minute, and it's just something I picked up. And I'm like, actually, when I do it without looking at the phone, I get more thoughts and I get less thoughts when I.
Well, you just have more things to focus on. I like that. I think that can be really helpful and just a great tool for grounding. Like it just, and you can do it really anytime, anywhere. And if you have your phone, awesome. If you don't, you can do it without, but it's great to have that. I love it. All right. Last question. How can my listeners connect with you, find you, follow you, all the good stuff?
Okay. So I'm clinical director of Menopause Natural Solutions. So you can go to our website, which is menopausenaturalsolutions.com. I'm also host of the podcast, Menopause Natural Solutions. You can pretty much find me on any social media and Menopause Natural Solutions. So it's pretty easy. It's the same thing. So thank you, Tanja.
And there you have it. I hope you took notes. I hope you're inspired to take care of your health, no matter how old you are. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to chatting with you next week. And until then, this is Tanja, and I'm here to remind you to be fit, be vibrant, and be you.